I'm Dickson, and I want to welcome you to another edition of our Masterclass. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the importance of trolling as a method of fishing. And I was going to leave it all with that wonderful example that I gave you the last time we talked about me taking my kids and now my kid taking his kids and so forth, and how it can exponentially grow our sport, which is really what I'm interested in. But I want to grow it in the right way. I'd like to have educated, brilliant, modern-day structure fishermen, knowing all of the facts, the true facts concerning a fish, what it takes to catch them, and then creating a manner of which we go about our fishing where we can continually, each and every day out, catch more and bigger fish. That's our goal. So I was about ready to leave it all, and this week I have some comments and some questions from a lot of my subscribers, which leads me to have to share one more story with you. It actually isn't so much about trolling, but it does concern trolling a bit. But it had to do with probably one of the most meaningful days of fishing that I've ever had since I met Buck Perry. Most of you already know, I spent my summers, basically about 8 weeks for 20 years, doing Buck Perry's on-the-water structure fishing schools. And back in the day when we found this spot on the Winnipeg River, Lake of the Woods, Canada, of course it had the exotic feeling that, you know, people in the States like to think they're going to Canada, you know, the fish are just all over each other's backs and everything will be automatic. Well, of course that's not true. But Canada did offer us the most important things that we needed to have a productive school. It had all different lakes and rivers and structure types, humps and saddles and bars, and it just had a multitude of things we like to teach. And it also had a lot of deep structure. After all, it's the Lake of the Woods on the Canadian side. Plenty of deep water and deep features. It's a great place to train people. And because of the river and the fact that it was a walleye river, it also enabled us to really teach trolling. Because, as Buck once said, there's two ways we go about our fishing, trolling and casting. Everybody knows how to cast, but no one really knows how to troll. Nobody teaches trolling. So we're going to feature that in our schools. We're going to teach people how to be good trollers, and it's going to change their fishing life. And it was the truest words ever spoken. In fact, I also did a winter school. I haven't mentioned that much, but in the winter I did about a 4 to 6 week school in Florida. And because, as I mentioned to you earlier, in Florida so much of the fishing, other than the spawn, is fishing these one-sided bars on break lines out in the middle of the lake next to these deeper water slots. So it was another perfect place to teach and hone in on the importance of trolling. With that being said, I want to go back for a moment because this story that I'm going to share with you, it happened at the summer schools. It happened in 1986. And as we started those schools in 1978, we had tremendous success. We not only had all of the features that we needed to teach as far as out on the water, but we had plenty of fish. We also had a lodge up there at that time that had 375 staff. I mean, it was a big, beautiful place. It was run by Radisson. We weren't staying in a log cabin, you know. And so we had the facility. We had the water, we had the fish, we had everything we wanted to have to run a productive school. So for 8 years, very, very successful. Even though my fishing had to change a little bit, I shared that with you too, where I was fishing, catching all my fish, the walleyes in the river on spoon plugs and wire. In 85 or 86, we had to switch to the river rig to slow down in order to get those fish. But we always had success. Well, in 1986, I was doing what I normally do. We would have the all-day schooling and fishing and training, and then at night we'd all have dinner together. And then if I had about 50 people, which was normal, about 40 of them would go to bed, but there was always those 10 guys, you know what I mean? Sometimes gals, but there was always those 8 or 10 or 12 people that didn't want to stop talking about it. They wanted to keep learning. So fortunately, they had this big restaurant bar, and so some of us would go in and extend our fishing education to the bar in the evenings. This one night, I was doing my normal preaching. Some guys were asking questions. I was facing them. They were sitting at the bar. I'm facing them and I'm telling them, you know, giving them the answers. And all of a sudden I get this tap on my shoulder. And I turn around. Here's this young gal who we had all noticed. She was the singer in this band. And she looked to be about 20 years old. Cute little gal. And she said to me, "Is your name Don Dickson?" I said, "Well, yes. What can I do for you?" She said, "Well," and she introduced herself, and then she said, "You know, I grew up fishing with my grandfather." She said, "And when my agent booked us into this spot to come and play up here," she said, "I was kind of disappointed. I didn't want to go into the woods in Canada to do what I do." She said, "But now that I'm here and I see all this beautiful place and this beautiful water, everywhere I look is all this water." She said, "I got the urge that I'd like to maybe go fishing." So I went out into the lobby and I asked the girl at the front desk if there was anybody around who, you know, you could hire to take me fishing. And she said, "Well, I'm not so sure about all of that, but there's an awful lot of people going fishing around here." She said, "But there's a guy in the bar. If you go back in the restaurant, you'll notice him. He'll have a bunch of people around him, and he's got white hair. And he, quite frankly, is the greatest fisherman in North America. So if you go ask him, he'll probably point you in the right direction how you can get a little fishing done." So she said, "Okay, great, thanks." So here she is, tapped me on the shoulder and asking if that's me. So her first question was, "Are you really the best fisherman in North America?" And I paused, just my normal silly self. I said, "Well, yeah, it's pretty much true." And she kind of smiled, and I said, "Yeah, I'm just being a little facetious." But that was a nice compliment that I had from the front desk. I said, "I don't know how true it is, but yeah, I do a lot of fishing. I fish for a living." So she explained that she had fished with her grandpappy and would like to do some fishing, and she was booked in there for like 5 weeks. And of course, I'm busy. I got 50, 75 people coming every week. I don't have time to take her fishing. But so I said to her, I said, "Well, I know some guides. There's about 30 guides that work around here, and there's some that are better than others." And I said, "I know a couple of the really good ones, and I'll check with them for you and see what their schedule is and see if we can't get you booked. And one of these guys take you fishing, catch you some fish." She said, "That'd be great. Thank you so much." So I kind of forgot about it. The night goes on, and I finished talking to my guys. We all went to bed, and then we get up, did our thing the next day. And of course, the next night, there we are again, back in the place, you know, doing the late night training. And all of a sudden, I get another tap on my shoulder. This is day 2. There she's standing. Of course, as soon as I see her, I remember I was supposed to find her a guide, which I hadn't done. And only because I was so busy, it just slipped my mind. It's that simple. So I had to try to make an excuse. I said, "I haven't been able to get in touch with anybody." She said, "Well, with the way I'm working, best time for me would be on Saturday." Well, I got to thinking, because I kind of felt sorry for the gal, and now I've let her down a little bit. So she said, Saturday would be good for me, as long as it was, you know, earlier in the day. And I got to thinking that when my groups would come in, they come in, fish all week, we'd have our week, and then on Saturday morning, they would have breakfast, and then everybody would shove off and leave. So they'd be home, you know, time to go to work on Monday morning. And then a new group would come in, but they wouldn't come in till Sunday, normally around noontime or a little bit later. So between Saturday, basically Saturday at 10 o'clock and Sunday noon, I really was free. But normally I didn't want to go fishing and go to work because I've been working all week. But I felt so bad for this gal, and she was so serious. She said, "I just have to go fish." I said, listen, I'll tell you what. I'm pretty well booked, but I have a few hours that I could go on Saturday. But it wouldn't be early. It'd be like 10 o'clock till maybe 2 o'clock. She said, that'd be perfect for me. And she got all excited. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll pick you up here at this dock at 10 o'clock on Saturday. She said, fine. So as the story goes, she comes down on Saturday. Now here I've got this, look like to be about 20-year-old young gal, who probably, her extent of her fishing had been drowning a minnow with a bobber with her grandpa back when she was, elementary school. So I knew that I had a problem because we had established a week before, me and all my students, those walleye in the river were downstairs and they were slow. We were doing that river rig thing. And here now I've got a gal that I'm going to try to teach her in an hour or two how to fish a river rig on wire when I know she has no experience whatsoever. I explained some things to her before we started fishing, and I handed her a trolling rod with wire. And I said, this thing that we're doing here is occurring way downstairs. The fish are between 35 and basically between 35 and 50 feet. And I said, we've got to get downstairs to catch them, but the fish are real slow down there because the water's so cold. They're not active, and you got to get the lure real close to them, and you got to move it by them at a slow or a next to nothing speed in order for them to take the lure. So she's looking at me with this confused look. She doesn't understand things. I figured, okay, I'm not going to explain it to her. I'm just going to tell her what to do. So I told her about letting the line out very carefully with her thumb on that wire. I first showed her, and then I reeled in, went back, and we started over again, and I let her do it, and I'm watching her do it. And then when we got the lure down to the bottom, it sunk to the bottom, I explained how you had to move the rod forward. Now she's in the front of the boat on this side. So she's moving the rod forward, dropping it back until she feels that weight hit. Same training I give every one of my students. And I said, now, if you drop it back and it hits right there, and you've only moved the rod that far, you have too much line out, then you got to pick up a little line. And so that you're hitting way back there. When you drop it back, you're hitting way at the end of that drop back. And I said, now all of a sudden, if you're reaching all the way back and you're not hitting the bottom, you need to let a little more line out. That was all the training I was going to give her. We made the first pass. First pass, like normal, I ended up catching fish. Now the fish was about 4.5 pounds. It was on the 35-foot stuff. So I reeled that fish in. I said, this is a pretty nice walleye, but we're not keeping fish. And I threw the fish back, and she just looked at me like, that's the biggest fish I've ever seen, and you just threw it back like it was just like nothing. Well, I said, don't worry about it. You're going to catch a bigger one than that today. You'll see. But you got to keep that lure just right. So we make this first pass. We go about 100 yards. Let's say 100 yards. And I'm here with the meter, but I keep watching her rod to see if she's doing it right. And when I'm watching my meters, make sure we're in the right place, I always have the sense that she's picking up a little bit, or she's letting a little out. I could always tell when she was adjusting. But every time I look at her rod, boom, she was doing it perfectly. I swear to you, I've had students for a week, can't get them to do it right. Now I got this gal doing it in 5 minutes. She's perfect. And I started thinking, I'll share this with you too. Most people don't know this. My family were musicians. I was a music major in college, Carnegie Mellon. I was a trumpet major. Played music all my life. Was a jazz player. Couldn't make any money. So that's when I became a stockbroker. Ended up fishing for a living. But I think it's something about being a musician. There's a rhythm to it. And she just had it. She was running that lure perfectly. And of course, because of that, and I had the boat in position, it wasn't 15 minutes into the whole thing, she hits a fish. Now, her eyes got this big. It was sort of like I was fishing with a 10-year-old child for the first time, and how big their eyes get, they get so excited. She got that same look on her face. She reeled that fish in, and again, this was what, for us, fishing those depths in that river. It was kind of a average fish for us, like 5 pounds. I took it off the hook. I said, "That's great. You did a really great job." And I put that fish back, and she almost had a heart attack. "Can't believe you're throwing that fish back." I said, "Well, I didn't think you'd want to keep any. I thought you just wanted to catch some fish." I said, "Normally I don't keep them unless you want a couple to eat or something." She said, "Well, I didn't think about it, but..." I said, "Listen, you're here for 5 weeks. You learn to do what we're doing here. You catch some fish, and you're going to catch bigger fish than that today. Let's just keep going." So we keep going. All day long we caught fish. Now, I don't know who caught how many, but it seemed like she caught as many as I did. She counted the total. She said, "We caught 24 walleyes, and we fished about 4 hours." She said, "We've caught 24 fish. Smallest one looked like 5 pounds. And the 2 biggest were 7 pounds. And the last fish she caught that day weighed 10 pounds. I've got this brand new little gal out fishing that don't know a thing about anything. First day, trolling, wire line, 47 feet. She catches a 10-pounder, the last fish of the day. She said, "I don't care what you say, we're not throwing that back. My daddy's going to mount that fish for me. I'm mounting that fish." I said, "That's fine. That's fine." But we had thrown all the other fish back, so she said that she had counted, we caught 24 fish. Well, she caught at least 10 or 12 of those fish, and one of them was 10 pounds. During that entire day, and here's where my whole mindset changed. This is why I'm telling you that story. Up until that day, I had never considered women as a target market for what I teach. Never considered them. I always just sort of thought, like back, where I was growing up, the men and the boys of the family, they went hunting, they went fishing, and the girls never did. Mom never went, my 2 sisters never went, had no interest. And that was the norm back then. But today, things are different. And things were changing even then, back in the 80s. There was a lot of women, a lot of girls interested in fishing. But you can't get them over the top, just like you can't get a 5-year-old over the top until you catch them fish. But once you catch them fish, you've got a serious student. So, getting back to the little gal in Monackey, she was so excited. Every time she caught a fish, those eyes lighten up. And she kept asking questions and questions. And I thought to myself, I've been missing the boat. I have to start targeting women. Not leaving them out, not just ignoring. You don't ignore them in anything else. Let's face it, women do most everything better than men, period. But in fishing, never thought so. But here was this gal, keeping that lure perfect with no experience. And it was only because she had a desire to catch fish. She saw me catch one, she wanted to catch one. Well, she ended up catching a bunch, including a 10-pounder. Most walleye fishermen I know go a lifetime, never catch a 10. I know because they come to my schools all the time. Never caught a 10. She caught one first day. So the interest was there. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do something about it. So from that day forward, I would give a break on anybody coming to my schools. You bring your wife or your girlfriend, you're bringing a gal with you, I'm cutting the price. I'm cutting her price in half. Just to get the girls interested. Because the more they're interested, the more the guys are going to get to go fishing. And so everything works to the good, see? So it was a year later, this gal took a vacation and booked into my school. She actually came to a regular school. And I was interested in finding out if she was still, capable of doing what she had done that first day fishing with me. Sure enough, it was like she was a 3 or 4 or 5-year student of mine. Perfect. Caught fish all week. Okay, I have to try to shorten this up a little bit. So it was a couple years later that Kurt Gotti and I got together, and he wanted to do this TV show, which we did. And then a year after that, he wanted to do a second TV show where I would take some students to these different lakes and catch different species with different students. And he said it'd be great if you had some younger, cuter people than you. I said, I know of a couple. I had a couple young guys who were just terrific. And they were on a TV show. And I thought, man, I get that gal. She lived in Minneapolis. And I thought I'd give her a call, see if she'd be willing to do it. Sure enough, she said she would. Well, I ended up having her on a TV show. In the segment, we were catching smallmouth. She got a bunch of big fish. In fact, Kurt Gotti in the editing room said, how many fish did you guys catch out there? I said, I have no idea. We caught a lot. And big ones. He said, we're only looking for a 30-second spot. I said, yeah, but we were having fun. And the #1 camera guy spoke up and said, we quit counting at 150. We caught fish all day long. So now, again, every time she caught one of them big old smallmouth, her eyes this big, you know, she really had a love and a desire to get better. So it even further triggered my thinking. Somehow I've got to include, not just talk about the kids, but I got to talk about the women and the girls. I got to get them fishing. It's fun. It's not for everyone. I read something not too long ago that said, fishing isn't for everyone, it's only for cool people. At any rate, I know it's not for everybody, but there's a lot of gals. Once they get involved, just like this little gal did, she just would take off and love it and go with you. You know, husbands and boyfriends, you'd have a fishing partner for life. Just catch them fish. I'm telling you. So, TV show aired and all that stuff. And it was a year after that, I was going to do one of my lectures. Now, normally in the winter, in the early winter, I would do lectures. And I would go to my key areas because I had made a lot of tapes and I had clients all over the country. But one of my biggest cities was Minneapolis. I had 20,000 customers just in the city proper of Minneapolis. Everybody up there fishes this. But at any rate, I thought I'd call my friend that had been on my TV show, let her know I was coming up to do a lecture. Maybe she could get some people to bring to the lecture. And it was a weekend class. It was all classroom, but it was a weekend class, Saturday and Sunday. So she said that'd be great. She was excited about it. She'd been reading all of the material, and she was really becoming a great little fisher person. And all of a sudden, a couple days later, I get a call. It's from her. And she said, I know you're coming this so-and-so weekend. And she said, I know you played baseball in school and all through into your 20s, you were a baseball player. And she said, I have a good friend who comes with his wife to hear us sing when we're playing locally. Comes all the time. It's Harmon Killebrew. Do you know who he is? I said, yes, I know who he is. He was a leading right-handed home run hitter for years and years and years. She said, well, I can get tickets from Harmon. We can get great tickets. I thought maybe on Friday night, if you wanted to go to a ball game, take you a ball game. Then maybe go out and have a bite or something after. I said, that'd be super. And so I go in Friday, and we make connections of where we're going to meet and all of that. And we go to Will Call, and sure enough, there's our tickets from Harmon Killebrew. So we go down, we're on the rail. We're right beside the dugout. I mean, great seats, right? And she said, why don't you hang tight here? She said, I'm going to see if I can get in the press box and see Harmon, thank him, and maybe see if maybe I can't get you into the press box for an inning or something. I said, boy, that would be fantastic. And really, not only am I a baseball guy, my kids are baseball guys. You know, we're baseball family. So she goes running off, and I'm just looking at this indoor stadium, taking it all in, you know. So after about 30 minutes, all of a sudden I hear the announcer coming over the bullhorn say, would everybody please jump to their feet for the singing of our national anthem and welcome our very own Miss Allie Randall. Huh? I look up about 50 yards up, and here's my fishing partner running out to the pitcher's mound and does a Whitney Houston a cappella and brought down the house, about 40,000 people. And I just stood there and thought, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And of course, she did tell me. She normally would sing for the Twins. She also sang for the Timberwolves. And she just thought she wouldn't tell me, you know, to make it sort of fun. And it was. When she finished singing that song, I thought, man, that's the coolest thing ever. And then, so we went on to dinner. And then she came to the school over the weekend, but I want to tell you how important that first trolling day was. Because 2 years after the ball game, I asked her to marry me. And we flew to St. Lucia and got married and spent 10 days on a honeymoon. And she's been my partner ever since. 27 years married, 30 years knowing. Now, if that's not living proof of how important trolling can be to you, I don't know what is. So some of my friends who do this story said, you talked about trolling, you never told that day, you met your wife. So now you know. That's how I met my wife. And I'm going to be introducing her to you in a couple of days when we do our Q&A for the month. Because when she was sitting there looking at that first Q&A we did, she said, that's the dumbest looking thing I ever saw. You sitting there, you know, with your head down to the camera reading those questions. She said, that just looked so silly. She said, how about this? From now on, she said, I don't want to necessarily be on camera, but how about from now on, I'll do those sessions with you. I'll read the questions and you can sit there and look like a genius and give me the answers. I said, that would be great. So I thought before I really introduce you to my wife, I thought I'd tell you how we met. I met her with a trolling rod in her hands, catching walleye in 45 feet of water. So I hope you enjoyed that story. That's all I wanted to break in and tell you today. But we are going to be starting the very next session we have. We're going to start talking about casting. I'm not going to talk so much about physically how to make a cast because I already assume that you know how. I don't want to waste time going through all the details. Here's how you flip. Here's how you pitch. Here's how you make a long cast with a jig. Or, you know, I already know you know how to do that, but I'm going to be zeroing in on where do I make my cast. Not so much how. How is easy. If you need a how, I'll give it to you in 5 minutes. Then we'll be done with it. But then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the where. If I'm making a cast, I have to know that that's my best chance to catch a fish deep. Right there. I got to know the exact spot. So that obviously includes in our discussion mapping, interpretation, and not just looking at an avionics contour map. That doesn't give you that doesn't give you the spot. Nor does your GPS give you the spot. You have to find the spot. And then you have to know how to make that cast and catch those fish. There's a lot that goes into it. So we're going to be talking more about the where, the what, and the why of casting, not so much the how to. Thanks for being with me today, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join us for our discussions on how to become a better fisherman and catch more and bigger fish. Thanks for being with me. I'll see you the next time.